teenagers are having more sex at an earlier age.
Half of our school is all for the, yeah, let's do it right now, let's not wait for anything for the future.
What an unbelievably horrible message we've given to kids. This is not just a physical act.
I'm Nicole Johnson. Young people today are being bombarded with conflicting messages about sex from their families, their peers, and especially the media. Coming up, a look at a controversial approach stressing abstinence. But first, our culture has become more open than ever in talking about sex. In response, many people of faith are now participating in the dialogue by promoting a positive, spiritual view of sex.
Well, I think that in our society, sex has become overemphasized as the most important thing and the most important part of a relationship, and I think that's part of the distortion.
Our sexuality is a part of us, but it is only a part of us, and it's a precious gift, but a gift that has the power to build up and to affirm ourselves and another, or which can be destructive too when it is misused.
While teenagers today have to deal with sexual messages and innuendo all around them, a debate is raging among parents and educators about how best to help them cope. For some people of faith, the challenge has been to articulate a message of teen sexual abstinence in a way that is more effective and meaningful than just say no.
Lots of my friends have already had sex and they're going into 8th grade.
Temptations, peer pressures.
Me and a lot of boys think about one thing.
People who have older friends or older brothers are like, show you movies and stuff like that. I have been asked once.
I wonder what she wants to do, you know?
They think that they get attention by saying that they're not virgins anymore.
It gets more exposed to stuff. So my friends, they just really into boys. And you start seeing it, and then it becomes like a pretty normal thing.
I think the pressures that young teenagers experience around sex is from within themselves, from peers and also from the media and the adult community. And so it can get pretty overwhelming.
Dr. Keith Olson is a psychotherapist who teaches at Bethel Seminary in San Diego.
For very young teens, those who are just going through and past puberty and into their early mid-high school years are experiencing some pretty strong sexual impulses, sexual urges. There are a number of changes that have taken place over the last 2 to 3 decades. One is that more teenagers are having more sex at an earlier age. Another one of the changes is that the gap between boys and girls is becoming much, much more narrow. It used to be that there was about a 20 to 30 percentage point difference at least between more adolescent boys having sex than girls, and now that is, I think, down to about 10 percentage points. It's really getting much narrower. Our, I think, overly sexualized culture presents some very unhealthy messages to our teenagers that erode their ability to make more mature decisions. One of those messages is that you should be sexually active. If you are a person who is going to be popular, who is going to have value, then you should be sexually active. And not only should you be sexually active, you should be good. You should be accomplished. You should be able to really attract the opposite sex, to not be able to hold themselves back from you. And that's the message that I think kids and adults are inundated with on a daily basis.
I think the attitude is basically depends on where you come from. Like half of our school is all for the, yeah, let's do it right now, let's not wait for anything for the future, anything. And there's the other half that are like, well, I'm going to college, I'm going to have a family, I'm going to wait till I get married to do that kind of stuff.
I think we ought to have as our goal, one of our goals in child raising, is helping young people to have the strength to choose not to be sexually active until marriage.
Well, I used to think that the baby just comes out from the mom because she ate a lot.
My dad used to tell me that I came from a Cabbage Patch. They tell me what not to do, and they know I'm probably going to do it.
Well, parents always like stutter.
My dad's kind of scared about that.
My mom hasn't really talked to me.
He thinks that all, you know,
I could talk. It's
my dad. He's too embarrassed about talking about sex.
My heart really goes out to parents who have a deep love for their children and yet find themselves at a critical point when they see their their young adolescent moving into a very, very intimate relationship and knowing that there is extremely strong sexual temptation, and yet there is not the relationship depth between them and their child to handle this kind of a critical issue. You can't just make it happen automatically. In a way, it's kind of too late to build that. On the other sense, you don't give up.
Clearly, parents must share their values and beliefs about sex with their kids early on. But as members of this church youth group in Vista told us, talking with their parents isn't always easy.
I don't think I go to my parents, just not because, I don't know really why, it's just kind of, you just don't talk to your parents about that kind of thing. It wasn't something ever really discussed, you know what I mean? It just, when it was brought up, and then we just drop it.
I think I could, because my parents have been open with me and telling me everything since I was about like 8, and I've known everything since then, and so I think I could go to them and trust them to understand everything that I told them.
Teenagers are getting conflicting signals from society and school sex education courses when it comes to the morality of sex.
They would like tell us like, yeah, use a condom if you're gonna do it, and then or you just don't do it at all. And a lot of people were too immature to understand what they were really going for right there. So
what an unbelievably horrible message we've given to kids. This is not just a physical act like animals. We are not dogs, cats, pigs, and cows. We choose. And sex for me and sex for you is more than a biological function.
Pam Stenzel is the director of Straight Talk, an organization she founded to teach young people the facts and consequences of sexual activity before marriage.
It involves more than your body. It involves everything you are. And if you actually think that it's just sex and it's not a big deal, then you have not walked or seen the pain that I've seen. I started just counseling in a crisis pregnancy center in Minneapolis and directing a center there. And I was just day after day, hearing girls say to me, I didn't know. Pam, if somebody would have told me that this would have been the result of the choice I was making, I've made a different choice. No one told me. I began to ask these girls, what could we have said? I mean, is there something that someone might have been able to say to you that would have helped you? And I finally realized that there were so many teens out there making choices about sex, having no concept what the consequences are.
Every choice we make, every choice you make either builds your character or destroys it. You are basically a product. Who you are is a product of all of the choices that you have made. And that's why it is so important that we heed and pay attention to what it is we're choosing.
The main thing I want kids to understand is that I can't make the choice for them. I mean, and no one can. This is a choice they need to make. But I want them to understand that if they have sex outside of one permanent, monogamous, and monogamy does not mean one at a time, okay? One partner who's only been with you. Outside of the context of marriage, if you have sex outside of that, you'll pay. There's a cost. No one has ever had sex outside of that boundary and not paid. So the question that has to be asked is, what's the cost? The physical cost of sex outside of marriage is just way beyond anything I think even most of us understand. I mean, for years I had girls in my office for pregnancy tests. They're all nervous and scared. I walk in and look at this girl and say, test is negative. And she gets this look of relief, I'm off the hook, not pregnant, I'm fine. I have to look at her and say, wait a minute. Have you been tested for syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, chlamydia, trichomonas, vulvodynia, arthritis, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV? I mean, this girl's looking at me like, I would need those tests? I just wanted a pregnancy test. Of course she would. Pregnant teens today are carrying, on average, 2.3 sexually transmitted diseases. Not one, not two, most of them 3 or more. And yet pregnancy was what they were worried about. I tell parents, if you would have graduated from high school in 1967, 1 in 32 of your classmates would have had a sexually transmitted disease. If you'd have graduated with me in the dark ages of 1983, okay, 1 in 18 of my classmates had a sexually transmitted disease. In 1995, it was 1 in 4. I mean, there's absolutely almost no way that a single person today could have multiple partners and not get some disease. We've got over 30 sexually transmitted diseases, 30% of them incurable. Obviously, the message, the media, much of the bureaucracy, the government has given students is, hey, you know, abstinence is a good thing and you don't do it. But if you're going to, make sure you use a condom. And responsible people practice safe sex. Here's the problem. There is no such thing as safe sex. And we know that. And the government has even said, and National Institutes of Health and Department of Health and Human Services, okay, not safe sex. Then they go, safer. Well, safer than what? The only safe sex is a safe partner. Someone who's not infected, period. That's the only safe sex. And any message that doesn't clearly state that is untrue. It takes strong moral courage to say, you know what, I am not going to cross that line, and I'm going to put boundaries in my life to make sure I don't even get close to that line, so that I'm not putting myself in temptation's way. We're all tempted. Every one of us is tempted. We deal with it, and no one is without. But God will make a way of escape. The problem is this, is that we say, you know, God, please, I don't want to have sex before I'm married, you know, and then we sit in the back seat of someone's car for 2 hours. I mean, that's about as stupid as standing out on railroad tracks and saying, dear God, I don't want to get hit by this train. Stop the train. You know, get off the tracks. I think when I speak in public schools and I'm not allowed to bring in God, the hardest thing to leave out, people ask me, how can you leave out? What's the hardest thing? The hardest thing to leave out is forgiveness. Is that they can be forgiven, they can start over, that God accepts and loves them and wants to give them the chance to start over.
God wants you to have great sex. And let me make you a promise. If you will honor him with your sexuality, he will give you your heart's desire beyond anything you could ever imagine.
Just through going to church and the way I was brought up, I've decided for myself that I'm gonna wait until I'm married no matter what happens, because I feel that it's just more special and better to wait. My role model would have to be my mom and my dad, because they made the respectful decision for themselves to save themselves for each other when they found each other later on in their life. So I'm gonna do the same thing till I found the right person.
It's not just a vow of having sex after you're married with that person, but it's also just continuing to stay monogamous with that person. And with my parents, if you see like the love that there is between two people, that's kind of like what you see and want for yourself to happen in the future.
There's more to sex than just getting it on. Almost everywhere we look these days, there's another ad hawking some kind of miracle sex drug, a cream or device, that promises to heighten and extend our sexual pleasure. Hello, I'm Art Cribbs, pastor of Christian Fellowship United Church of Christ in San Diego and president of Pacific Media Ministry. What is missing from almost all those products is a word about intimacy and respect between a couple. So much of what happens in bed is not just physical and sexual performance. First, there's the question, when is sex appropriate in a relationship? How do we express our love to the most significant person in our life? And does our partnership create a total commitment and interdependency that locks us together through the most difficult and hardest times? Do we share the same values and dreams that will carry us through life? And do we desire to bring new life in the form of a baby into this world? Taking time to talk about who we are and what we mean to each other is where we begin to consider how far we will go with each other. And in these days of HIV and AIDS and communicable diseases, it's crucial to talk honestly about where we have been and with whom. Tough times require tough conversations and tougher decisions. It's better to get turned off by the truth than to get turned on and discover we're living with a lie that won't go away. When it comes to sex, the golden rule that says love your partner as you want to be loved can make a big difference in your relationship.